What's up, everybody? My name is Scott Paddock, and today we are going to talk about how to play a fall on the saxophone. Falls are relatively easy to play. You just take the fundamental note and you play descending notes below it. But there are definitely a few tricks and techniques that you can use to take your falls to the next level. So how do we take a fall that sounds like this and turn it into a fall that sounds like this? It's actually pretty simple. There's just a couple steps that you need to follow to greatly improve your falls. Okay, so the first step in improving your fall is not just playing descending notes below your fundamental note. What we want to do is take that fundamental note and go up a half step. So I'm starting on an A, on the alto saxophone, that's an A, and I'm going up to a B flat pretty quickly and then falling through the A. By doing that, it creates a lot more texture. It just gives you more direction. Whereas if you just fall directly below the fundamental, in this case the A, it still sounds pretty good, but you just lose that little bounce that takes that fall to the next level. When I'm teaching it to my students, I always compare it to a diver jumping off of a diving board. They don't just like walk to the end of the diving board and just fall in the water. They go to the end of the diving board, then they jump, and then they go into the water. So the going up a half step is our little jump before we fall through the fundamental note. Okay, so why do we go up a half step? Actually, it's not always a half step. It's just the majority of the time it is. So probably 90% of the time you use a half step. The reason for that is because that note is not functioning in the scale or the chord. You're just creating color with that note. So the half step seems to draw less attention to itself than the whole step. But every now and then a whole step is going to sound better. So just play around with it, and whichever one sounds better is obviously the one that you want to do. So in the case of the A, I'm going to go up to a B flat. And now I'm going to go up to a B. When I go to that B, you can definitely hear me go up a whole step. You can hear that I'm going up higher. When I go to the B flat, it just sounds like there's more texture in the fall, and you're not quite sure why until I tell you. So in slow motion, so I start on the A, I go up to the B flat, and then fall through the A. All right, so now you know that you should start your falls by going up a half step and falling through the fundamental pitch. Now, what notes should you play? It really depends on the context of where you are falling, how fast you are falling, but the general answer to that would be as chromatic as possible and kind of avoiding your flip-flop notes. So on the saxophone, I hardly ever play a C when I'm falling unless that's very close to like I'm playing a B and I'm using my side C or something like that. I usually don't want to flip-flop the note because it slows down the fall. And I almost always use my fork F sharp just because it's way cleaner. So I'm not going to be totally chromatic, but I'm going to be very close to chromatic. So in this one, in slow motion, I'm pretty much only skipping the C and the B flat. I skip the C and the B flat. Obviously, I'm playing the half step up B flat. But when I'm going down, that B flat and the C seem to slow me down a little bit. So I just kind of fall through them and skip them. Now, if you have a short fall, you have to do chromatic. So like if you're falling from a low note, as saxophone players, obviously we don't want to do that very often if we don't have to. But when we're falling from a low note, you have to get as many notes in there as possible. And then, of course, what note should you go down to? I always go down pretty low, somewhere between a C and a B flat. And again, it depends on the context of the song. And usually by the time I get to the low notes, you don't really hear them anyway because of the next step that I'm going to tell you about in a second. But I'm almost always down to at least a C or a B flat. And that one I'm all the way down to the B flat. So now that you know what notes to play, you know that you should go up a half step, fall through the fundamental, and play as chromatic as you can all the way down into the pinky keys. The next step is the decrescendo as you go down. So obviously you want to get softer as you're going down. So by the time you hit those last notes, the tone is almost disappearing. It's almost completely silent. As you can hear, by the time I get down to that B flat, you almost just hear more keys clicking than any actual sound coming out of the saxophone. Here it is in slow motion. The final technique that we're going to talk about is what you should do with your tongue during the fall. So as you're falling, you want your tongue to go down further in your mouth, saying the word dow. Say the word dow and pay really close attention to your tongue. Dow. It almost sounds like it fall in itself. Dow. So if you do that, it creates a downward sounding scoop as the notes are going down. So you don't hear the specific tone and pitches as much as you just hear them all connected, kind of falling their way down. And when you do that, you also don't hear that half a step up as much as being a real pitch, just being some motion and some direction in the line. And that's pretty much it. To take your falls to the next level of playing, you just basically need to follow 4 rules. Rule number 1 is go up a half a step, sometimes a whole step, but go up a half step and fall through your fundamental note. Step number 2 is hit as many notes as possible and play as chromatic as possible. Step number 3 is to decrescendo as you are getting lower. And step number 4 is to drop your tongue and say the word dow as you're decrescendoing and the notes are going down. Okay, so all of those techniques pretty much work in any fall situation. But what is specific to each fall, depending on the concept of the song, is the length and the speed of the notes. So if you're playing a fast song and you have a fast fall, obviously you're going to play everything faster. If you have a slower song and you have a long fall, obviously you're going to slow everything down. So we want those notes to be even, but not in time. So we don't want them to be metered like. We don't want that at all. We're not playing a chromatic scale. But we don't want them also to be like fast and slow. We just want them to be even and falling through your saxophone as fast as you can. So these fall techniques also work with glissandos. Glissando is when you fall between 2 notes, like I was doing in Softly as the Morning Sunrise, the song that I was playing as my intro. So I'm going between an A and E. So I'm starting on the A, I'm going up to the B flat, and then falling chromatically through the E. I have to go chromatically because there's not that many notes there, so we need to fit in as many as we can. And I am decrescendoing, but I'm not obviously decrescendoing to silence because I'm landing on that E. So I want to start on the A, go up a half step, decrescendo, and land on the E. And that's pretty much it. That's how you fall. You start on the fundamental pitch, you go up a half a step and fall through the fundamental pitch. You hit as many chromatic notes as you can, playing evenly as possible, and then you decrescendo on your way down, as well as lower your tongue in the dow position. If you're doing a glissando, you land on the gold note. If you're just doing a regular fall, by the time you get to your low pinky key notes, you should be very quiet, if not silent. If you have any questions, please hit me with a comment, and if you have any suggestions for future videos, hit me with a comment also. If you found this video to be helpful, I'd really appreciate it if you give me a thumbs up, subscribe to my channel, and share it with your friends. Thanks again for checking out my videos.